It's really great to have you here today. It's, Justin, always funny, and I've always said this, by the way, and I told you this. I've told you this many times. The funniest person I know. So just start off, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I grew up in the outskirts of St. Petersburg, Russia. My mother died in the winter of 1982 in a field of wheat during a particularly brutal Russian winter. I never knew my father, and my brother died at the month of 3. I was found at a riverbank by a local crayfish fisherman. He took me in on his own, named me Linda. He fashioned dresses for me out of various bed sheets and some of his grandmother's old tablecloths and curtains. We wed when I was 12. He would pay me to work in his fields with cranberries and various cherry stems, and on the weekends he would take me to market where he'd have me dance for coins. When I was old enough, I escaped. I swam across the Pacific all the way to California at the age of 15, walked the southern route of the United States until I made it to Maryland, where I got a job at a video game store known as GameStop.
This actually is a great segue into what conversations we've had about your comedy. You're a comedian.
Oh, this is serious. Oh, that's my bad. Oh, I thought we were improv.
But no, here's...
We gotta do the real story? Oh, that sucks. My real upbringing's dull.
Well, no, we've talked about this before. Your comedy style is not quick hits, right? You have a longer tailed storytelling when you do your shows, correct?
It's purposeful schizophrenia.
Okay.
It's what I like to say, sort of controlled chaos, a lot of unnecessary adjectives, a lot of like off ramps towards nowhere. Half the time I swim out to sea until I can't see the shore verbally, and I'm like, well, guess we're gonna drown in this bit of crowd work. And a lot of the crowd goes, I wish you were Jeff Dunham.
But that's a lot different than what other comedians are doing, right?
Some. You know, I work with a couple of great comedians. I work on 98 Rock with 2 extremely funny guys, Scott Reardon and Josh Spiegel. And I work with the Die Laughing Productions group. DLP Agenda's the podcast. It's a comedy murder mystery troupe. And those are made up of actual top-tier stand-up comedians. You have musical comedians like Eric Woodworth and Tommy Sambazo. Individually, they're both great writers, performers. You have crowd work specialists like Joe Robinson when he did stand-up, excellent writers like Rob Mayer. And I am just the guy that sort of, I'll ramble comedically, incoherently. There's a lot of crowd work stuff these days. I have a tendency to just float towards the absurd compared to what do you do, how long you've been together, how long have you had that cleft palate, have you always been badly burned? I will just sort of spin backstories for people that make no sense until there's no more meat left on the bone, then I move on.
So there's not a lot of prep, or there is a lot of prep going into a show.
There's a framework. There's a framework. I usually, instead of like typing out the entire alphabet, I'll hit A, M, and Z. I know where I want to start. I have something in the middle that I want to get to, and I have a way that I'd like to wrap it up.
How do you write those A, M, and Zs? What's your process of getting those? Again, they're jokes.
Yeah.
You're funny, but as you've said, they're long stories that you're swimming out to sea, and then you've always got to come back. How do you come up with that information, those jokes?
I'll take things that have like actually happened to me or a friend. Sometimes I'll see something happen to somebody, and I'll adopt the story as if it happened to me. And then I like to have stories that start with a kernel of truth, but I'm a pretty well-known exaggerator, just even in conversation. And I'll just stack on some eccentricities to the thing. So I'll take something that actually happened.
And that's your base.
That actually happened, and then I will, if it's brilliantly funny in and of itself, if something has happened that's so funny and I can take it as is and present it, but then I'll think of other little tags, little add-ons, little comparisons, little different ways of using adjectives. And yes, I will build out. I'll slowly pack clay onto the thing and shape it over multiple retellings of it all.
And are you writing this all down? Are you putting it on a video? Are you audio recording it? How are you keeping it in your mind so that you...
Smartphone, notepad.
Okay.
A lot of voice-to-text dictation before that. You know, these little tiny notebooks you'd carry with you. I mean, sometimes scraps of paper. There's a brilliant comedian. He's on the Joe Rogan Experience all the time, Mark Normand, who's one of the most brilliant comedians in the world. But he gets a lot of guff from a bunch of his friends because he has in his back pocket, you could search this, he has wads of notes and cards and receipts and sticky notes and receipt paper that he just writes ideas down on and he just keeps them in his pocket.
Yeah.
And they look schizophrenic to the outsider looking in, but to him, it's just this tapestry of material that I guess maybe at the end of the night, I've never actually met the guy, but maybe he lays out on a table and goes, that's worth keeping, that was absurd, I was on mushrooms, and can see what he wants to keep.
So looking at somebody, if you had to tell somebody how to do this, or explain and give somebody advice, first off, can you learn how to do this? Is this just a God-given gift that you have to be able to write this stuff and be funny?
I think everybody to some degree is funny. It's just your ability to deliver it to someone. The funniest person I've ever met isn't a comedian. He's not. There's a guy that I'm friends with. I call him my best friend from Waldorf. His name's Pete Burson, and he's brilliant. He just works for the government, and him and I used to work at a video game store in Waldorf. And as far as comedic influences, every comedian has one, he is my #1 influence. He's one of the funniest men I've ever met. He's not a public speaker. He's not someone that can get up and can orate. You're a wonderful orator. You can speak well. You have to in your line of work. So you can be very, very funny. But if you can't then deliver that, then it's kind of a moot point. I mean, there's a lot of people, myself, Joe Robinson, Rob Mayer, and others, that we've met that are very, very funny. But if you can't then take that and in front of a crowd of people you've never met, that's the trick.
Do you think you can... do you think you could sit down and actually write out, let's say like a business writes a system. Could you tell somebody or write a system for, and maybe it might be possible, could you write out a system as to how to tell a joke?
You know who you should ask about that? It's interesting you bring that up. There's a guy named Rob Mayer I keep referencing, and he had a pilot idea that's called Funny for Five. And he was going to take people and try that and make them a comedian. He was going to take an absolute amateur. He was going to take the lady from Target or the guy that mows his lawn or the neighbor across the street that hands out razor blade filled apples at Halloween and go, you know what, there's something funny about that bit that ends him up in prison. Let me see if I can take that person and teach them to write. Let me see if I can teach them to perform. Let me see if I can teach them to emote and see if I can take these stories and make them succinct. Could I do it? Probably not, because I don't have a very traditional comedic style. I'm kind of bounce around the walls a little bit until I find my path and move on. Sometimes it takes me a while to get to the funny. But Rob Mayer, who's a wonderful joke writer, and one of the best joke writers I've ever met, I thought to this day I would love to see that get made. I believe he called it Funny for Five, where he taught someone to be funny for 5 minutes, like Mirtha. The guy's hysterical. Amazing. One of the best foot rubs I've ever had. The guy knows his way around a BLT and a go-kart race if you've ever met anybody. The guy can pick out a bad strawberry from a fresh one from 50 yards just by smelling through his left nostril. Could he get on stage and deliver? Can he do it succinctly? I don't know, but I bet Rob Mayer can train him to.
Yeah. You talked about your buddy, and you're from Waldorf, Maryland.
Waldorf, Maryland.
Right?
South Hell on the River Styx. Chuck County.
Was there somebody, aside from him, that put you in the direction of where you are today?
In regards to radio, comedy?
Let's start off with comedy. Was there somebody that you look back on and you say, or were there more than one people that look back on and say, those were really the ones that got me towards the direction I am now?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of people. The aforementioned Waldorf Pete Burson, who's a friend of mine. There's another guy, came from the Waldorf, Charles County, Southern Maryland skateboard scene. I used to skateboard. I still pretend to. It's weird being 45-year-old with a bad back and ED trying to skate around with 15-year-old kids in a parking lot of a high school because parents, big thumbs down to that. Get back here and I'll show you how to do a pop shove it. This is going to put me on a watch list. I'll head back into the forest now and finish making those beans. They hate it when you skate with them. But there was a guy that I skated with. His name was Brian Ball. And Brian Ball was such an interesting guy because he would skate barefoot and he would skate weird. And you had some very standard tricks. You would do an ollie, jump your board. You do a kickflip, make it spin. You could do a tail grab your tail. He would invent tricks all the time. And he would do them comedically. He would almost Chevy Chase pratfall into tricks. And he had an alter ego. He had this character called the Vortex, where he put on yellow and green spandex, a yellow and green luchador mask, And then he would begin to skate around on ramps. He'd crash contests. He'd go to punk rock shows and try and like fight the lead singer, all while acting like this insane skateboard luchador. He's been in Thrasher magazine. He's been in other kinds of ads, but it was all comedic. It was all comedic, and it showed like you can take a thing that other people do, skateboarding, and completely make it your own, and completely do your own thing. And he was so funny. He was the only guy that ever made skateboarding funny. And it's not a funny thing. Like in your field, a lawyer might have some good wit and witticism or a funny off-the-cuff comment. But I mean, imagine somebody going in there and half the deposition, half the trial is him doing improv with a strange wig on and two different color shoes. You'll probably piss the judge off and your client's going to drop you for somebody that's been assigned to them as a state. But you'd be like, I've never seen anything like this. And that was Brian.
And he inspired you how? He
just inspired me to, he's like, you can be funny. Like, he wasn't the greatest skater. I knew many better skateboarders that were way more proficient. The size and the grandeur of their tricks were much larger, much more impressive from a feat of skill. But Brian had everybody's attention. You'd see somebody performing some unbelievable aerial maneuver. You'd see somebody skating a big ramp like Tony Hawk and doing these, you know, incredible method airs and 360s. But it was the stuff that Brian was doing that was so freaking goofy and so unlike anything you'd ever seen. He got their attention. And I think all of us like to be paid attention to.
Did you like that?
I loved it. And I loved the attention that he got.
So would it be safe to say that the attention you get from somebody laughing at your joke,
yes,
is it a drug?
It's addictive. And it's addictive, and it's interesting. If anybody that you ever meet, maybe national touring theater comedian Brian Regan aside, the most normal man, the most human comic I've ever met. Every other comedian is a psychiatric nightmare. Every single one of us have some mom, dad, familial, self-esteem shaped, gaping shotgun blast chest wound in our pride that we need acceptance from strangers. It's not a normal thing to want. To have strangers laugh with you, to laugh at you. A normal person, a normal mind doesn't crave that.
Have you figured out what that is for you?
Yeah, I think if someone is laughing, you control their emotions. If someone's laughing with you, they're not mad at you. If someone's laughing with you, they're not wanting to confront you. If someone's laughing with you, it's a surface level emotion. Comedy's very pass-fail. Did the crowd laugh? You did a great job. Did they not laugh? You didn't. And if you keep it surface like that, which is why I've always felt like music is so much harder. Music, the response song to song can be completely different. From some ballad to some heart-wrenching folk piece to some big party rock anthem to some braggadocious hip-hop track to whatever. The range of emotions a song will get is different than the pass-fail, laugh or no laugh. And that, I think, it'll sometimes keep people from discovering any more about you. Because I think sometimes we can be closed off on purpose, and if I can keep you laughing, if I can keep you chuckling, I can control the speed and penetration of our relationship.
But what void is it filling with you? Or is there a void?
No, I think there's voids. I think there are. I think there's acceptance things. I think I have big imposter syndrome, that I don't feel like I should have the jobs that I do in radio or even Die Laughing Productions or the gigs that I get. I have familial ones that has a lot to do with my mother, who is no longer around. I think I'm trying to make people laugh and to bring them joy, because I feel like if they're enjoying themselves because of me, they'll like me. And I immediately assume when I meet people, they don't like me. And I don't know why, but it is a flaw. And I think a flaw that I have is that I need people to like me, and no one that you've ever met. You're one of the kindest men I've ever met, which is rare in your field. But still, shout out Mirtha, shout out Pesaurus, also a couple of sweethearts. Have I mentioned Mirtha's foot rubs? But no one's ever going to be beloved 100%. Oprah came closest. And we're trying to get that. And if I can get you to like me, then I won't be anxious about how you feel about it.
Obviously, a lot of comedians and people in the industry suffer with substance abuse issues, drugs and alcohol. Ever been an issue?
Yeah, I had a substance abuse issue very briefly, but it was One that never spiraled into anything destructive, but it did to a point where I had to have a nice stern talking to from a friend, and an issue with pills right around 2010 to 2011, 12, where I did a tour in Canada. They used to call it the Poverty Tour. And you'd go up there and they'd take American comedians and you'd go and do tours in the winter around hockey season, which is religion in Canada. So you'd take American comedians that would break even on these tours, but you got to say you toured Toronto, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver during times of the year where crowds were light, crowds were thin, crowds were disinterested. So they'd take people from the States and they'd send you up. Well, you'd also be in the middle of winter. It's a Canadian winter. So there's 4 feet of snow outside, or 1.5 meters, or whatever godless unit of measurement America's attic uses. One day, we will bomb them for their freshwater supplies. You hear me, Trudeau? We're coming for that ass. And all you would do is sit there for 16 hours of the day in the hotel that was also the club and the restaurant. You'd have nothing to do. So you could get high, you could drink, and then other people would be like, we could head down to the clinic and say our foot hurts and get a bottle of codeine. We can get Oxycontin. We can get hydrocodones. And
so was it out of boredom?
Boredom.
Okay.
It was literally past the time. And you would, and at first, you know, you get 1 hydrocodone and mix it with the vodka and it really unlocked the flavor. And then 1 turned to 2 or 2 to 3 over the course of the day. And then you'd time it out to where let me get my head straight before the show. And then when the show was over, you're bored in a hotel room and you would take another to get to sleep. And then that went on for about 6 weeks. Nothing crazy, but then I got back to the States. The tour was over. And getting that stuff was different.
Was this that period of time where you were coming off of California, you were dealing with maybe some pill issues? California, was that before or after?
This was before California into California.
Okay.
Which...
and you went to California, and I want to get to that because I think that's a big thing, but I want to hit on at least...
Yeah.
How did you stop?
Yeah.
And how would you advise or tell other people to stop like you did?
Yeah. Good people, have good people around you. It never became a destructive thing. I hate to grade addictions. I mean, you have addictions for wrestlers and you have addictions for football players and mixed martial artists and regular people as well. Sometimes a lot of opiate addictions start with people that had legitimate need for them, and then they got a liking to them, and they didn't need them anymore, but they still wanted them, and they spiral, and that turns into heroin. It never got that bad.
Okay.
But yeah, I get back from Canada in 2008, 2009, and I still had a taste for them.
Yeah.
And
so you knew it. You realized.
I knew. No, I got back, and you'd start to get like the itchies without them. You know, it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm curled up, shaking and sweating, but I don't think I was done taking them. I kind of liked them. And I would ask around, and there was sites you can go on to. There's websites, and then there's people that go and get dental work. Hey, here, you got a tooth pulled. They give you anything good? Give you anything good?
Yeah.
And this is way before there's any type of opiate epidemic.
Right.
You know, it's kind of silly, like, oh, you got some work done? They give you anything fun? Give you anything fun? Yeah. And then, you know, I'd buy a couple of things, and I think what happened, well, what I know what happened, is that I mistimed one night, me kind of getting my head screwed on straight, because I never perform inebriated. I don't do well. I have to really maintain...
You're not in the green room drinking
I'm not in the green room drinking. Maybe I'll have a vodka soda over the course of an hour, a short one while eating, to like relax some and go out there and have fun. But I mean, there's people that pound 5 or 6 drinks.
You want to be clear.
I want to be clear because I'm very rapid fire in my delivery. I move around. I want to do callbacks. And I botched it one night. And I think I still had something left in me. And a friend of mine noticed. And I guess he came over and hung out and noticed when I was on. And he and his wife had a real direct talk with me. I was so embarrassed that he saw me.
And that was enough.
That was enough. That was it. I never needed a rehab. I didn't need anything. I think I had a bottle with like 10 or 15 left in there.
Do you feel lucky that you, as a comedian, as a celebrity, didn't have to go through that phase that a lot of them do?
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky. It never got bad. I wasn't stealing anything. I wasn't getting fired from jobs. I wasn't driving, getting DUIs, DWIs, anything like that. But you know, there was a moment. I was also in between work. I was trying to become a full-time comedian. So when I got back from Canada, I quit a job. I quit a job where I was selling soft goods, clothing, merchandise, corporate branded stuff. And I quit the job. I go on tour. I get back, And I made a decent amount of money. And I got a local ad for a car dealership, not Jones Junction, jonesjunction.com, the home of the Jones for a Lifetime program.
Heard of it.
It's a great place. Shout out to Jen. And I made some money from that. So I was just home all day.
Yeah.
Waiting to go and do shows at night or open mics at night, if I even had them. So I would just do what a 20-something-year-old would do. I'd turn on my Xbox, I'd get high, I'd, pop a pill, and I would have people that were also maybe off work during the day come by and see me, and maybe I was buzzed. And they don't care if you're buzzed during the day, whatever. You're a at-home comedian.
Yeah.
Rob Mayer, who's a traveling comedian, no day job, he fills his with golfing.
Yeah.
He has a healthy career. He goes and he golfs. He stretches his legs. He writes. He gets ready to do more DLP stuff. Me, I passed the time by watching movies, playing games, and took a pill, and botched it when I went out one night and was noticeably slow and murky on stage. It was not that.
I want to get to California because I think it's a great story,
Yeah.
but I also want part of your 98 Rock is that you guys talk a lot about media.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about what's in the news, what's the new movies and TV shows and music. How do you, and when I listen to you on the radio, your range or your library of information is just so vast.
Yeah.
How do you consume all that information? And do you almost have to force yourself to sit down and watch these shows that you can, okay.
Yeah, especially if you know that there's a big talk topic of something, a new season of some major show. Obviously, Orioles and Ravens we love, they're the flagship station, so we watch as many of those games as we can. But like movies, new Netflix series, sometimes they genuinely interest me. There's as we record this right now, depending on when you're watching it, it's the release date of the Vince McMahon documentary on Netflix, 6-part series. I love wrestling. I'm going to watch all of that. It's trending #1 right now. Then you have the Monsters series about Eric and Lyle Menendez. That's got to fascinate you from a legal standpoint. Yeah. And that's a big talk topic thing. But you do have to drink in a lot of media.
Do you feel it's almost like a job?
Yeah.
Like I need to sit down and put in 4 hours of watching Netflix and Hulu and all the other different.
Yeah, you got to find time where you can get it while not neglecting your family, which should be #1. So I either wake up early and do it, I consume it on the weekends. I mean, there's certain times, strike me down for saying this, but I'll have like a phone propped up in the car and I'll watch entire Scorsese films on car rides to drink in media because you don't have a ton of time. But yeah, it can be, you ever heard like powerlifters that are trying to gain weight, bodybuilders?
Yeah.
They have to force themselves to eat calories. Like they're sick after the 8th meal of the day. I sometimes feel like that with consuming media. Like I can't watch another movie. I can't watch another TV show.
And you're reading books.
I'm reading books.
Right.
I actually enjoy reading. Reading helps put me to sleep.
So, since you touched on it briefly, you have Mudge.
Yes.
You have some kids.
Yes.
You talk about Evan, your son, on the air a lot, right? Mm-hmm. How does that affect your need to consume media? And obviously you have somewhat of a job schedule, but you have to go in very early and you get done midday. How does that affect your family life?
Oh, I'm super neglectful. I will be in my basement for as many hours out of the day to avoid them as I possibly can. We actually have a fun little string and bell system set up that the string through a series of conduit will go upstairs. And if anybody needs me, they'll ring it and I'll slide a note under the door. And whatever the response happens to be, maybe I'll read it, maybe I won't.
Does Mudge complain?
Oh, she tries to, but I've soundproofed the door to the office. And I use the same sort of foam magnesium padding that we have at the office. I've stole at least $2,000 worth of that material from work. Fingers crossed they don't see this. And I've glued it to the back of the door. So they could be on fire up there and I won't hear a thing. I've made myself a nice little nest of peace.
So then how do you do so much and advice, because obviously this is advice with Rice, right? How do you balance? What advice do you have people that maybe have a job, maybe not even just in radio or TV, but like a job that just consumes their time? How do they balance that to make sure you have a good family life?
Seriously speaking, family has to come first. So I always see to it that when I pick up my son from school, he's in 3rd grade, I spend an hour with him. Do whatever he wants to do within reason. Whether it's going over homework, whether it's playing a game with him, whether it's going outside, I have to make sure he knows that he's my priority. And then the stepkids will come home right around the same time as my girlfriend, and we always have a sit-down dinner, which is, I can't stress how important that is. I mentioned a guy named Gordon that I skated with in Waldorf. And I didn't have a lot of sit-down dinners in my house, but that was one thing with the Eckler brothers, Gordon and Greg Eckler, the Waldorf. skate heads. They were sort of the the two big skateboard brothers. Their father, Howard, my son, his middle name is Howard, named after my friend Gordon. And his mother, Carolyn, she would have 15 to 20 gross little skate grommets around the house, front yard, driveway, ramps in the backyard. But when it was dinner time, she'd send everybody home and keep like a friend or two. And more often than not, I was lucky enough to be that friend. And I saw how important it was that they all got to sit and catch up over their day. And I always took that with me. So now I make sure we every night, right around 5:36, we always have dinner. Even if it's for 30 or 45 minutes, we always do.
Were your mom and dad not doing that growing up?
No, we did not have dinner.
Okay.
We ate and watched TV. Mom was a nurse, dad was a construction worker. So the schedules were really super off. So with a job like mine, where the schedule is pretty non-traditional, I'm waking up at 3, I'm going to bed at 7:30 to get some human sleep. Fridays and Saturdays I have gigs. Sundays I might have gigs. Weeknights I might have gigs. You have to find those pockets to remind them that they really are priority, that all the stuff you're doing from 98 Rock, which is my #1 priority, to all the fun secondary, tertiary stuff, DLP Agenda, Dial After Productions, and then just stand-up comedy and some other projects, Twitch on Wednesdays, twitch.tv/Justin98Rock. Those you need to make sure the family knows, I'm doing all of this for us.
Yeah.
I'm trying to create revenue streams. I'm trying to create some brand growth for the Justin Schlegel brand, whatever value that has. But do I do it for a portion of me and my ego? Absolutely. But I need to make sure that they know I'm trying to set us up for the future. Make sure that they know their priorities. So hanging out with him at home, seeing the big kids, dinner at night, something on the weekends.
Sounds like you're just doing great time allocution and putting an hour with Evan, an hour with dinner, and then maybe there's some other times on the weekends.
Always making sure, just really, if you've only got an hour a week to spend with them, make sure you are making them aware how important that hour is to you. Not just to them, like, here's your one courtesy hour. No, make sure they know that hour of time you get with them, that's one of the most important parts of your week. Dinner is important to us. Saying grace before dinner is important to us. Talking to my son for an hour is important to me. Making sure that we do have these pockets of time, that the family time is the reward for the work that's been done.
Again, there's no limits, as you told me. And you mentioned you say grace at dinner.
We do.
Is the church a part of your life?
I wish it was more so, because I grew up in the church some. I'm Irish Catholic. We did Mass. I did Sunday school, things like that. But yeah, no, I'm a believer, and sometimes people have trouble reconciling that, considering as much as I sat out shading on the air, I gotta stop, all right? Every now and then the Dark Lord just pokes his gross little black horny skull up through the dark earth and looks at me and I go, get out of here, you. I'm not gonna watch that adult video. I got a kid in the next room and he wants his dino nuggets. Come on.
So we talked about briefly about California, and I just want to hit on it because I know it's kind of a long story, but give me the 30,000-foot view about California, why you went, what the plan was, what the goal was, how long you lasted, and why it didn't work, and maybe what advice would you say to people? Go to California, do this, don't try it, don't do it.
You will never succeed if you don't try. I have, you know what I love? I love a failure. I love a failure because a failure annotates you tried. A failure to me is someone that tried and failed. There's a definitive end. It might not be the end that you wanted, but it doesn't leave questions. The questions are what eat at you later in life. Like, I have relatives that talked about doing this or doing that, and they want to do this, they want to start that. There's a business idea, there's a whatever, something that they wanted to do. And they talked about it their whole life. They never tried.
What was the purpose of California? Before you left, and you said to yourself, my goal is X.
My goal, what happened was, the briefest of timelines, I was accepted into what's called the Montreal Comedy Festival, just for laughs. It's now defunct. But it was the combine for young comics. What the NFL is, the combine is, just for laughs was for young comics. And they select 10 to 12 new faces every year from across the country. And you go there for an audience. Now, you've been to see me at Magooby's, one of my favorite clubs in the country. And Magooby's can sit about 300 people, 350. Now, imagine that same size crowd, but every single person in that crowd is industry. CBS, MTV, Viacom, Hearst, TMZ, whatever. Pick a media outlet. They're there and they want to see you. And they want to see what your energy is, what your look is, what your material's like, all that. And then afterwards, you're essentially wooed. You'll go back to a hotel mixer and there's light fare and cocktails, mountains of Coke. Mountains of Coke. Just, you could sled down it as far as the eye can see.
I have to cut that.
Yeah. There's just mountains of energy drink, mountains of Monster energy drink. Just as much you can jet ski down those green, bubbly, 300 milligrams of caffeine rivers, and you would be wooed.
Yeah.
You would have people that would
And that
be
was
like,
the purpose of going to California, was to be in front of those people.
well, this Montreal was
Okay.
where I was discovered by people
Okay.
from California.
I
So
see.
I signed a development deal before I went to California. I went to California to be around management.
So they had already wooed you.
Yes.
They liked you. You're going out there to the next level.
Yes.
Okay.
If you make it to Just for Laughs, you're going to sign to a team.
Okay.
Like if you're in the first round of the draft, you're making it into the NFL.
Yeah.
If you go to Just for Laughs for the new faces, you're going to sign to someone, whatever agency. William Morris, New Wave, I signed with a company called The Collective, and you went out there and they would just start to pitch you. Development deals, auditions, tours, whatever. And I signed with a relatively young, upstart company that had a lot of lofty goals, but not as many inroads as I come to find out that they had. I loved them because of how much they loved me. There was two very, audacious, gregarious women that were the main managers there. And
Was there a choice?
There
Or
was. There was another choice between a guy named Barry Katz, who had a company called New Wave, and he was responsible for Dave Chappelle. He was responsible for Dane Cook, and I felt like I might be a C-level comedian in an A-level company instead of being the #1 big comic on a roster that was very small.
Big fish, small pond
Yeah,
versus
exactly.
small. Now, do you look back at it and say, man, I should have gone with that? other guy"?
100%.
Really?
Yeah, definitely picked the wrong team.
Really?
1,000% crap the bed.
You think it would
Yeah.
have changed? And this was going to be one of my questions.
Yeah.
Like, was there I look back in life and we always sort of say there's forks in the road, right? The
Yeah.
major forks, and had it been different, it would have been a different outcome. Is that a major fork in the road for you?
Yes, it was. There's always forks in the road. You look back and go, damn. You know, you assess the knowledge and the facts you have at the time, and you hope that you went on the right off ramp towards something, and I didn't. And I went towards a company that was trying to find its own identity, trying to find its own client list, and it just didn't work. On top of the fact, now I got to take plenty of ownership out there. Los Angeles, New York, Chicago are sort of the big three. What I should have done is move to New York. Where New York, you move to become a better comic at the time. These days, it's Austin. But in 2010, you moved to New York to be a better comic. I moved to LA trying to skip that route to get opportunities because I met comics from New York that would go up 9, 10, 12 times a night. Los Angeles, you might be able to go up once or twice. You get tempered in the fires in New York, become a better performer, and then you go to Los Angeles. You ever seen NBA players that jump right from high school to the NBA?
Right.
And then sometimes you go, I wish I would have gone the college route, become a better player, and then headed over. I skipped college.
Yeah.
I should have gone to New York for a while because I've had some friends that went out there that became absolute killers.
Yeah. Do you
And I
have
never
do you
grew.
have New York in you? Let's say the kids get older, they go to college, they leave the house. You and Mudge are looking at each other, trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
Does New York appeal to you to say, I'm going to try this again and do it that way?
845 now. 845 now. And the world has changed since then. This is about 15 years from.
Yeah.
You have major comedians, a guy named Chad Daniels. He has a special right now called Empty Nester. One of the most brilliant comedians in the country. He's never left Minnesota. He's lived there his entire life. You don't need to be as geo-specific as in LA or in New York. Rory Scovel, another great example. A friend of mine, awesome HBO special, incredible YouTube series called Robbie with Beau Bridges. He just moved from Los Angeles to Denver, Colorado. But he still is starring in movies, starring in series, national headlining tours. You don't need to be there anymore. But for a young and up-and-coming comic, you need to go to a scene. And these days, because of Joe Rogan and his ilk, Austin has become that. Joe has built this mecca for comedy to let young comedians thrive and get on stage a lot. You need to get the reps in.
Is it because technology allows you to just do things wherever you are and you can travel, and that's the difference between when you were in California and today?
Yeah, traveling you still need to do to get in front of live audiences. I think we all tried to do the Zoom comedy crowd in the 2020s. It was awful.
Yeah.
Zoom comedy shows don't work. But to meet with someone, like I met with a publicist recently, recording a special November 30th, Ramshead Live. and I'm going to have a publicist help push it out there. Well, 15 years ago, I need to drive to their office or fly to their office or have some phone calls. Now, I just jumped on a Zoom, and everything we need to do, I will do through that. But getting in front of a live audience, you have to go somewhere where those audiences are. And at the time, it was New York. Now it's Austin, somewhat Chicago. Los Angeles had them, but no one, you couldn't get the reps in to become a better comic out there. And kind of getting back to what I was saying about owning my own failings, it wasn't just the fact that I didn't go to New York and become better at the craft. New York and LA is full of the big fish from the small pond that decided to then all move to the big pond. And there was about 50 or 100 of me out there. Really. There was 50, 100 other Justins. Middle-aged white guy, beard, kind of a dork, wore a hoodie. There's, I mean, very little set me aside compared to a lot of other very unique people. Because, I mean, it really was the best of the best in New York, some of the best in LA, and I didn't distinguish myself enough. There was nothing, I was unique for this area. But out there, there was some people that did it larger, better, more proficiently, more shined up to where I was lost in the shuffle.
So it sounds like you really have to, like you said, distinguish yourself, be the outlier, the one that's just going to, right, okay.
You have to be unique about it, and I didn't do that.
While you're in California, you are working a part-time job with 98 Rock, or you're doing some work with 98 Rock, and you come home after California doesn't work out, and you segue into the 98 Rock system, or the 98 Rock world, right?
Yeah. What happened is right before I moved to Los Angeles, I got a full-time job offer to work at 98 Rock. And that was a real Sophie's choice. You want to talk about a crossroad? Well, this was an interesting situation where it's like, okay, I have a night show offer, full-time, great pay, great benefits, 98 Rock, Hearst. It's officially, it's the greatest radio station in the world to work for. Not just for them taking care of you, but for the managerial structure, the corporate culture, radio and radio DJs. They love to fight each other, management and all that. 98 Rock is very special. It's a very unique place with a genuine familial culture. We're privately owned. We're no debt, cash assets. We're all self-contained. And instead of having to make this crossroads, this is how special 98 Rock is. They said, go to Los Angeles. We'll set you up with remote equipment to where you can do both. There is not another radio station on the planet that would have let me do that.
Right.
You go follow your comedy dream, but you can do this job here with some remote equipment they gave to me. They shipped it out for me, got me an engineer out there to set it up, and I got to do my radio show from my apartment. And because of the time change, you know, I was hours and hours behind, so a 7 to midnight show became 3 until 8, and I was able to record the last 2 hours. So it would be 3 to 6 p.m., and then I would leave and go do shows and go do auditions. It was brilliant.
Great world for you.
It was amazing work for me. The only reason I was as successful as I was out west was because of 98 Rock. Really, it was because of them propping me up financially. They paid me well. They let me do it. After a while, they had to say, we need a jock here. We gave you about 2 years to really take off. It hadn't. They fulfilled their end of the deal, and they had to let me go and replace me with another night program.
So let's fast forward to 98 Rock and how you ended up in this great position you are now, where you have this household name in Baltimore. Tell me a little bit about that and how you got to be, you know, part of the leader of the Justin, Scott, and Spiegel show.
One of the three. There are no leaders. The only leader, there is a leader, it's Joe Stamboni or Josh Spiegel. So I got brought back to do afternoons in 2013, and in the former morning show, or 2012 actually, and then in 2013, there's a former show called Mickey, Amelia, and Spiegel, and Mickey moved on to some other interests, and Spiegel stayed in mornings, and Amelia is a killer rock jock. She loves music, she loves concerts. So she began to do her own show, but they needed another morning show. So Scott, the producer, who was great behind the scenes as a producer, but he's even better on air, they're like, you've been on air so much, you've been so good at it, let's just make you a full-time on-air talent. Josh, you just keep kicking ass and taking names. You're great. And we got this guy in afternoons who you could tell wants to be a part of an ensemble, me, and let's do Justin, Scott, and Spiegel. And what's interesting is that the prior show, Mickey, Amelia, and Spiegel, they had a couple of years together in afternoons. And then when they were moved to mornings, they had built up a pretty nice rapport. The only thing that really changed was their shift. myself, Scott, and Josh, we had about 48 hours.
Yeah.
Like, they told us on Friday, you guys in the morning show on Monday. Get to know each other.
Figure it out.
Oh, hell, okay. So we went to our boss's house, a guy named Dave Hill at the time, and we sat and we talked, and we figured out what to do. And it was for about a year, it was a little bit of a rough birth.
Yeah.
It was us trying to figure each other out. Josh and Scott already had a good rapport. I knew those guys from filling in from time to time. I would fill in as a morning show guest. But to work around the clock and to have me run the board. So that's
a lot more to
It's
it.
a lot more.
Yeah.
So it took some time, but
How do you tell somebody that's trying to get into that? I mean, it sounds like the stars really aligned.
Yeah.
Is there a way, if you would have said, if I'd have done X, Y, and Z, I could get into this, or is this just something where it just has to happen?
it's all chance.
Yeah.
It's just when, what do they say? Luck is when preparedness meets opportunity. That's all it was. I just happened to be, I like to call myself 98 Rock's Plan B. The night show went away. I happened to be interested in doing radio as a comedian. Go ahead and come do it. Suddenly, the afternoon show goes away suddenly. Would you like to come back and do it? Suddenly, the morning show goes away suddenly. Would you like to come do that? I'm sort of their break glass in case of emergency.
Yeah. Sounds like there's a little luck in.
A lot of luck.
And luck is just part of it. Like you just said, you got to kind of be in the right place at the right time.
You can be lucky and get the opportunity, but if you don't have the capability, you're not going to last long. So luckily, it's the people that I do it around, Scott, Josh, Joe Stamboni, our associate producer, Will. I work with great people, which makes the job that much easier. It lets me breathe and lets me flex my creative muscles that I want to. And, we got to produce 20 hours of original content every week. It's a unique medium, man. We have to do 20 hours of very hyper-local, yet somewhat national, sports, comedy. Josh is one of the most brilliant newsmen that's ever existed in the medium. So it can be taxing, but there's also all kinds of outlets these days. You have podcasting, you have YouTube channels, you have Twitch channels and stuff like that. That is in addition to radio. Radio will never go away. Radio will change and maybe be delivered digitally instead of through an FM, AM band or satellite. But local, good, hyper-local radio is so unique because it can do stuff for people that a Rogan can't do, that a Theo Von can't do, all amazing programs. But if people want to find out what's happening in Arbutus, in Bel Air, in Towson, Timonium, Dundalk, Essex, Glen Burnie, you need a show that services that community. It's the medium fish in the medium pond, and it's a perfect fit, and it stays there, and it succeeds.
Yeah. And ready for the lightning round, Justin?
Here we go.
All right, here we go. What time do you wake up for the morning show on 98 Rock?
3:30 a.m.
What's your favorite comedy club?
Magoobies and Timonium.
Would you rather be too hot or too cold?
Too cold.
Last comedy set that gave you nightmares?
The Chesapeake seafood restaurant in Colonial Beach. It was horrible. Someone attacked me with lip balm.
How would you best describe your comedy in one word?
Schizophrenic.
How many hours a day do you play video games?
Not enough.
What's the best advice you've received from a fellow comic?
Be true to yourself, find your voice. Respect the audience.
If you could have dinner with any comedian, living or dead, who would it be?
Ooh, Bill Murray.
Last time you got asked to take a selfie?
This past Saturday, Trifecta Food Truck and Music Festival.
What is your favorite sport to watch?
Football, Ravens football.
What's the worst fashion trend you've ever fallen victim to, not including this sweatshirt today?
I wore Affliction shirts, and I thought they looked great, and it just had a skeleton knight riding a bone horse across a flaming field of skulls, and I weighed 135 pounds. No one thought I was in the UFC.
You're going to wear that this weekend, right?
I still have it.
Any pre-round rituals or superstitions before a set?
I always go to the bathroom first.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your go-to music in the car?
Face to face.
Who would play you in a movie?
Charlie Day. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
What is your favorite city you've traveled to for a comedy show?
San Diego, California.
What would you be doing if you're not in comedy?
International mercenary.
Karaoke bar or Irish pub?
Karaoke bar.
Aside from this interview, if you could delete one embarrassing memory from your mind, what would it be?
Okay, I'm going to give you a second one because the first one, this is a family program. If I could delete one embarrassing memory from my memory. The 2012 failed afternoon show promotion where I tried to get a bunch of fat guys together at Cancun Cantina to wear Spanx and call it Spanksgiving, and no one showed up, and the owners got $1,500 worth of food, and it was me sitting by myself, covered in Spanx with a producer, and no one showed up, and he glared at me for an hour, furious.
Okay. What quality do you value most in others?
Kindness.
One comedian you'd love to open for?
Tony Hinchcliffe.
Are you enjoying this interview?
I'm loving it.
What's your go-to excuse when you want to get out of plans?
Menopause. I just can't stop sweating. This old gal's starting to feel the mileage tick up.
What's one of your pet peeves?
Unnecessary rudeness.
If you could choose your future nickname, what would it be and why?
The Dragon. No, the Laser Dragon. No, the Iron Dragon. No, two dragons stacked on top of each other. A big old bag of the Dragon Wagon. And I got a big, fat, scale-covered butt.
Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Extrovert.
What's the best thing about being a celebrity?
The attention's nice.
What's the worst thing about being a celebrity?
The attention sucks.
If your pet could talk, what's the first thing they would say to you?
Quit kissing me.
What's your coffee order?
Dunkin' Donut, cold brew, almond milk, 2 Splenda.
Favorite childhood movie?
The Goonies.
What number question are we on right now?
No clue.
When was the last time you wore a tuxedo and for what?
Ooh, Preakness 2021 when my big bosses from New York were in town and we had to introduce some acts on stage and we were filming our TV show and it was hot and I lost my deposit.
And were you overdressed?
Way overdressed. It was 98 degrees out.
Craziest thing you ever done for a laugh?
I jumped through a window once and I thought it was safety glass and it wasn't. I cut myself pretty badly.
If you could have any job for just one day, what would it be?
UFC light heavyweight champion, but I don't get hit.
What's one skill you hope to master in the next 5 years, even if it's totally random?
I'd love to learn to play the guitar.
If you could have a personal theme song play every time you walked into a room, what would it be?
Ozzy's Crazy Train.
What's something ridiculous you hope will become socially acceptable in the future?
Being able to vape soup. I'd love to be able to vape a nice chicken noodle soup.
If you had to live in one movie or TV show universe, which one would you choose and why?
Robin Williams' Hook. It just looks like so much fun. The Lost Boys eating the make-believe food. I love Peter Pan, and I love Robin Williams, and that world looks fun.
What's the silliest goal you have for yourself that you secretly hope comes true?
That my comedy special gets paid attention to by people in the industry, and my next comedy special people want to buy and put on a streaming service.
What's one weird gadget you wish existed to make your life easier?
I wish I had the second robotic body double from the Bruce Willis sci-fi spectacular Surrogates, where you could lay down in your apartment and a weird robotic android that looks exactly like you would go about your day, but you're back there at home controlling it remotely through a neural link.
What's a strange hobby you hope to pick up in the future, even if it seems out of character?
Stand-up bass in a swing band.
And last question, which superpower would you choose?
Invisibility.
That's great. You did pretty well.
Thank you.
How do you think you did?
Not great.
So I really want to thank you for coming. Where can everybody find you? I know you've got a million different things going on. So tell one more time, give us sort of
the most important thing, 98online.com. 98online.com for all things 98 Rock. For Die Laughing Productions, the live murder mystery shows, there are 10. We put people in them from the audience. If you do great, it's awesome. If you do badly, it's even better. That's dielaughingproductions.com. Every Tuesday night, the DLP Agenda podcast. Myself, Joe Robinson, Rob Mayer, we go live on YouTube, or you can just search DLP Agenda on Spotify, iTunes, and Twitch. I stream video games. I eat weird foreign snacks. I had some mukbang mung fruit the other day, which gave me real bad nausea. That's twitch.tv/Justin98Rock every Wednesday, 7 p.m.
Instagram?
Instagram, Justin98Rock. And I'm on Grindr as Dr. Winky Pickle Tickler _420.
And you're not on Twitter or X?
None of it.
LinkedIn?
Not a one.
Facebook?
Nope.
You hate it?
Can't stand it.
Thank you, brother.
I appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
You're the best.